Hi everyone, my name is Peter and I'm a consultant hired from New South Wales government to do analysis on Ryde Hospital to see if the hospital compliance to our targeted KPI has been met or not. In doing it, I'm going to use three main topics, which are going to be hypothesis testing and Excel functions to aid with our scenario analysis, and they are going to be goal seek and scenario manager. So first of all, I want to have a summary to our data. As you can see in here is that I have gathered the data from the New South Wales Health website to our review on the hospital. So that is the number of a 0 star, 2.5 star, 5 star, 7.5, and 10 star for the hospital come from New South Wales. However, when it comes to Google Maps, and then I have a more thoroughly analysis on the data on the website, I found out that the number of 0 star review on Google Maps is significantly higher than in the New South Wales Health website. Because of that, I found out that the New South Wales Health has a little bit of bias to Ryde Hospital. And to balance it, I'm going to add more 0 star review on our final data to have the most accurate analysis. And finally, that is going to be my final data. And as because of that, we are going to incorporate Google reviews to our final analysis. And now let's move on to hypothesis testing. So first of all, we have to understand that what we are going to do right now is we are going to test our score to see that the hospital has met the KPI or not. As you can see in here is that the targeted KPI of New South Wales Health, it is going to be larger than 8.7 score to be performing, and anything below that is going to be underperforming or not performing well. And we are going to test our assumption by conducting a hypothesis testing. So what is a hypothesis testing? So hypothesis testing is a statistical means of testing an assumption stated in the hypothesis. And then it is going to use a sample data to extrapolate insights about a larger population that we don't have access to. And by doing it, it will mitigate risk in data-driven decision making, and then it will slightly eliminate a human factor in it, so it wouldn't have bias in our analysis. And so let's move on to the first step of conducting a hypothesis testing. So we will have to know what is a null and alternative hypothesis. So the null hypothesis states that there is no effect or difference between two of the sample that we are testing, or between our one sample with our hypothesis mean. And the alternative hypothesis will suggest that there is an effect or difference between those. And then as you can see in here is that I have one example, is that the null hypothesis, the mu is equal to 5, and the alternative hypothesis is that the mu is different to 5. And so the next step, which is the most important step, is that we're going to conduct and then calculating a t-test, and then we will have a conclusion to it. And we're going to compare our t statistic that we have just calculated to the t critical to conclude we are going to reject or we do not reject the null hypothesis. So right now, let's go to do our hypothesis. So as you can see in here is that I have my data in here, and we're going to conduct a hypothesis testing in here. And the kind of testing that we are going to do is one sample t-test, because we only care about our data in here. It's just one sample in here, and then we are going to compare it against the targeted KPI of New South Wales, which is going to be 8.7 at least to be performing. And let's go to the first step, which is going to be stating our null and alternative hypothesis. So I have in here is that my null hypothesis is that the mean of our sample data is going to be larger or equal to 8.7, and the alternative is that the mu is going to be less than 8.7. So let's go to do the t statistic. So first of all, what we have to do is that we have to calculate the count of every number that we have in our data in here. And so I have calculated it, is that the count is going to be 334. And then we're going to calculate the sample mean, which is the average of all our review that we have in here. Next, we are going to do the standard deviation, and then I have calculated it in here as well. And because we are comparing our mean to the hypothesis mean of the KPI, which is going to be 8.7 in here. And then right now, let's do the t-test. So right now, let's go and conducting the t-test in here. And then the t-test is calculated by using the sample mean that we have in here, and then minus by the hypothesis mean that we have in here, and then we're going to divide it by the standard deviation, and then divided by the square root of the count in here. And then that is going to be our whole formula for calculating the t-test in here. And then after calculating the t-test, we will have to find our t-critical value to conduct our hypothesis testing. And so our hypothesis testing in here is that we are going to conducting a one sample t-test. And because of that, we will have our t-critical value calculated by this function, which is going to be the significant level in here. And then we will have our degree of freedom in here to calculate the t-critical value. And because of in here, we are going to conducting a one sample t-test, so it is going to be this function. But if you are calculating a two-tail t-test, and then it is going to be two sample, and then the function will be slightly different, and then it is going to be calculated by using this function in here, which is two-tail of it. And then we will have the probability in here, which is going to be 5%, and then the degree of freedom is at the count minus by 1 we have in here. It is slightly different from that, but because of our testing right now is that we are having a one sample t-test, so we will use this function to calculate our t-critical. And after that, we are going to compare our t-test with the threshold of the t-critical in here to reject or do not reject our null hypothesis. And so, as you can see in here, is that it is our rejection region in here. If the t-statistic of our calculation is less than the t-critical value in here, so we will have to reject the null hypothesis. So in here, I have written a function which is going to be an if function. If the t-test in our calculation is less than the threshold, so it will perform a reject in here, or else it is going to be do not reject. So as you can see in here, with our sample and then with the hypothesis mean of New South Wales, is that every hospital has to meet the 8.7 to be performing. So because of that, we will have to reject the null hypothesis in here, which is going to be the mean of the hospital is bigger or equal to 8.7. And so because of that, we will have to say that the hospital, the mean of every customer satisfaction is less than 8.7, and therefore it is not meeting the targeted KPI of New South Wales. We know that the hospital has not met the KPI, so we will have to have some plan to improve the overall satisfaction of patient in here. So in doing that, we are going to use data, and then we are going to have the goal seek to find that where and then how we are going to improve it. And then by using the goal seek, we will find that where is our point that we cannot reject the null hypothesis, which is the mean of overall satisfaction of patient in the hospital is more than or equal to 8.7. And then we are doing it by set the cell of the t statistic in here into some value that is bigger than the threshold in here, and so we cannot reject the null hypothesis, and we are going to set it into minus 1.63, so it is going to be larger than the threshold, so we cannot reject it. And then by changing cell is that we are going to see how many differences that we can make by changing the 10-star review of the patient in here. And so, okay, as you can see in here is that the hospital has to have 264 10-star review, and in an instant that all of the other is not changing. So as you can see in here is that the result in here is do not reject now. So we can accept the null hypothesis is that the overall satisfaction of patient is larger or equal to 8.7. And by doing it, we will have to gain 76 10-star review more than that to achieve it. So I will have is that now let's change the 0-star review, which is going to be the really negative one that one customer or patient has to deal with. And so let's do it again. And in here we will have go sick again, and then we will set the t statistic cell in here to minus 1.63 again by changing cell in here. And so as you can see in here is that with approximate of 14 less 0-star review, then the hospital will meet the compliant for the targeted KPI in here. So right now, we will just have one more thing we have to do is that we are going to have a scenario manager, is that to see with each scenario what will change in here. So we will go to what if analysis in here and then go to scenario manager. So in here I have created two scenario. Is that the first one is the best thing that could happen, is that we will raise the count of the 10-star review in here, and then it is going to be 264 as we have calculated before using the GOSIC. And then the next one is the normal scenario, is that we are going to change the value of the count for 0-star review, and then we will change it to 7 in here, and then we will have the table in here and then result cell. And then finally, as you can see in here is that right now we have to reject our null hypothesis, is that the hospital is not meeting the compliant right now. And then with the best scenario and the normal scenario in here, both will have the result cell is that do not reject. So we will not reject the hypothesis mean is that the hospital will meet the compliant. So overall in here, I have conducted a hypothesis testing, and then I have been using what if analysis with scenario manager and GoalSeek to have a thorough analysis on Ryde Hospital and what to improve in the hospital. That is all. Thank you for listening.